Hello everyone, Brian Neubert here from GoldandBlack.com. This is your GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast. It is normally a few of us, but instead of just talking over my coworkers during the entirety of this podcast, I've cut them out entirely here, so it's just me. This is a monologue this week, which is Latin for single log, I believe. Thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your support as always. We appreciate it and have for the entirety of our relationship. Actually going to dine at the 811 Bistro tonight because I'm classy. And you too can be classy. It is Friday that I'm recording this, so I can't give you a review here, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's going to be pretty good. So keep the Purdue Union Club Hotel in mind anytime you're on campus. And I'm sure they'd love to have you. So what we're going to do this week is, look, it's May 25th. There's not a whole lot of pressing stuff going on, but there has been an enormous story this week in the world of college sports, which is obviously our lane. And this might be kind of boring. This might be kind of academic. This might be kind of granular. Maybe not all that interesting if you're into like who's on Purdue's football team or who is Purdue basketball recruiting or when is Purdue basketball going to go back to the Final Four, that type of stuff. But, you know, the NCAA and its membership, which are the same thing, because the NCAA is its membership and its membership is the NCAA. The NCAA is not just a bunch of people in suits and shirts and ties or whatever in Indianapolis. It's the university presidents, their staffs, their athletic departments, etc., who run all this, who make all the rules, who make all the decisions, etc. All of the power conferences made the prudent decision to settle this convergence of lawsuits that were out there that have commonly become known as the House case, brought to you by an Arizona State swimmer by the name of House. The headline potential for this is limitless. The house is burned down. Disorder in the house. Burning down the house is a copy editor, headline writer's dream come true. Because what it is doing, it is completely turning the NCAA's generations-long model upside down. It is creating an entirely new world order here. It's basically changing the organization entirely. Everything you know about college sports and how it's run, how it's operated for as long as any of us have been on this planet, on this earth, breathing this oxygen, it's now obsolete because everything is about to change. Again, like 2 years after everything changed before with NIL and the transfer stuff, that's the scientific word. That's how it's codified in the rules. Transfer stuff. Now it all changes again because this $2.8 billion settlement that the NCAA is going to be forced to pay out to past athletes who could not benefit from NIL is going to bring with it sea change. I love that term, sea change. Everything's going to change here for the NCAA, and I'm just going to run through some primer-related stuff here, some questions, and I'm going to perhaps talk to you like you're five, which is how I prefer to be communicated with in trying to explain this. But if you're interested in this, I would urge you to go read up on it as well, because I don't know how well and how succinctly I can kind of sum all this up. And there's a ton that is left to be decided upon, left to be sorted out and sorted through and all that stuff. So there's only so much we know at this point. But what we do know is revenue sharing is upon us. Schools, for the first time in history, are going to be able to and have to basically pay their athletes. So the amateurism model, which has become a punchline in the modern era, is no longer. the difference between college athletes now and professional athletes is, I don't know. One goes to class and one doesn't, um, theoretically. Um, so schools are going to be able to share. The number I've seen reported was up to 22% of their annual athletic revenue. Um, I'll just throw numbers out there just for the sake of explanation. Purdue in years past, and I don't have their 2023 financials yet, but I'm imagining their revenue was probably in the vicinity of $100 million. Now, a lot of that goes back into the product, obviously. So when I say revenue, I don't mean profit. I mean revenue, how much money they brought in via their many, many avenues of revenue, revenue streams, if you will. God, this is going to be boring. So let's say Purdue brings in $100 million. They're still going to, be paying for everything they've always been paying for, the expenses of operating sports. I'm not sure how the scholarship situation is going to work. Purdue has always done that to the John Purdue Club. But now 22%, let's just say 20% for a nice, even mainstream number. 20% of that $100 million would go into a fund to distribute to the student athletes. Now, how you do that is going to be a very, very complicated, very, very multi-layered question. And it starts, the first question, and one of the most important questions about all of this, that's going to inevitably be decided by a court, is how does Title IX apply to this? The letter of the law for Title IX states it's about participation. Now, if you take $22 million or $20 million, does participation mean female athletes have to get the same amount of money as the male athletes, or do they just have to get money, period, to satisfy the participation box? That remains to be seen. It will be a fight, I'm quite certain. There will be people arguing both sides of it. If it's a situation where you have to, I don't want to say have to, because a lot of schools might want to, but if it's a situation where half of that money is going to go to the female sports, then that obviously is going to be something that guides a lot of athletic departments' hands in terms of how they spend their money. This apparently is going to be a situation where schools themselves are going to get to decide, or have to decide. I wouldn't want to have to decide this, how they spend their money. So whether that's blanket salary for every player, whether that's fantasy draft style, pay these guys and surround them with lower paid guys, studs and scrubs, I think they call it in fantasy sports, don't they? Something like that. That's not the appropriate terminology in the context of what I'm talking about here. But, in track and field, where you have limited scholarships, you see a recruiting strategy sometimes where somebody puts all their money into like one event and banks on that event producing national champions and enough points at the NCAA championships, where if you win every throwing event, you get enough points to where everybody else has to do very little for you to get in the top 10 or whatever at NCAA's, maybe even win the thing. So if you give your full scholarships to like Croatian throwers who just dominate, then that's going to give you a baseline of productivity at the NCAA championships. So if this is up to schools, do they go get a $5 million a year quarterback every year and then surround them with whatever else they can get? That's going to be up to them. I would not want to do this. I would not want to have to make these decisions, because if you do stuff like that, right now the way Purdue basketball's got this figured out in terms of NIL is everybody makes X number of money before they get to what they earn. So like Zach Edey gets in seven figures this past year after he was National Player of the Year. That is what will be referred to in this conversation as quote unquote true NIL. Like, you earn this. Companies wanted to do business with you. Things were arranged for you, sure, but it is based on your merit. It is based on what you've earned. But that stuff will still exist. It will exist on top of whatever this salary is. But as it is right now, when it just comes to the salary, if schools are going to decide, hey, we're going to pay this guy this, this guy this, this guy this, you are begging for disharmony in your locker room. That's why, Matt Painter has kind of had this figured out to where everybody's making something, so you don't have discord in your locker room when everybody finds out what everybody's making. And if anybody wants to complain that Zach Edey makes more money than whoever, then go be National Player of the Year. It's just not a good argument to make, and it does really lend itself to a more harmonious locker room. You hear horror stories in college basketball, especially, where once people in the locker room find out that this guy's making more than this guy, all of a sudden it can kind of blow up your team chemistry a little bit, and things like that. That's the risk you run when you're doing it that way. But that's the decision people are now going to have to make. I can already tell you how Purdue basketball is going to handle this. I could not tell you how Purdue football will handle this. If this is up to the individual schools to distribute the money as they see fit or as they need to. So that's going to be a really hard thing for administrators and coaches and whoever else has a say in the matter to sort out. But the first domino that has to fall in place is finding out how Title IX is going to apply to this. And I think that it's going to be a situation where if you do it one way, you can get sued. If you do it the other way, you can get sued. So whether there's going to be an answer to that question before all this begins in 2025, I have no idea. But again, this is why athletic directors, and this is why university presidents, and this is why trustees make big money, because you got to make hard decisions like this. But this is a decision that the NCAA fought for way too long, an event that the NCAA fought for way too long, and now here they are with their hands once again forced by the courts. Another question comes out of this is roster size. I have no idea. There are going to be roster limits apparently as part of this. What that means for walk-ons, I have no idea. But the scholarship limit that we've traditionally talked about in recruiting is now a roster limit, essentially, ostensibly. I love that word. It is now, you now go from scholarship limits to roster limits. Now, I have no idea how scholarships are going to play into that. They're all going to be on scholarship, I'm sure. But what that means for like baseball, like if baseball gives you a 40-man roster or a 30-man roster, does that mean 30 scholarships for baseball now, which would triple their number that they operate with at the moment? I seriously doubt it. That would be a quick way to make baseball a club sport at a lot of schools, because athletic departments just aren't going to want to take that money away from football and basketball. That's just the reality of it. I'm not anti-baseball. I'm not anti-women's golf, anything like that. I'm just saying that is the world as it is. It's better to look at the world as it is and not how we think it should be or how we want it to be. And that's just the reality of it. Football and basketball are still going to be priorities here. The big four in this pecking order at a lot of schools, at Purdue, for example, would be football, men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball, I would assume. In the SEC, baseball will obviously be a big deal. But roster size, what does this mean for walk-ons? You've got to have walk-ons, right? You can't just have 15 guys on a basketball team. You have to have somebody to practice against, and it doesn't stand a reason to suggest that they couldn't get paying students to be part of the team for nothing. It just doesn't stand a reason, and I just can't see it doing away with walk-ons. I can tell you how, Matt Painter will approach this. He does not want 15 guys on scholarship. I think in a moment of honesty, women's basketball coaches would probably tell you that the 15 scholarships they've been working with forever have been too many. Nobody needs that many players on scholarship. You will have people at the end of your bench who you don't want to risk having malcontents on your team, messing everything up. They couldn't be important from a scout team, role, whatever it might be. But it is a really dangerous game sometimes when you have that many players. Purdue men's basketball is a very active redshirting program, so that could offset a little bit of it. But the biggest impact, I think, right now is like today, I think, is as Purdue gets into these 2025 and 2026 classes. We've been talking about this 2025 class like it's a one scholarship deal, which it is on paper. But if you've got this extra space that you don't really want to fill coming down the road, it at least gives you a little more flexibility. It's like built-in oversigning, essentially. So as I suggested, and I think I'm onto something here, on our site this week, and please read our site also, GoldandBlack.com. We think you'll like it. I think that, a one-person class has now become something more because they're a couple years away, or a couple months away even, from one scholarship mutating like a gremlin that you poured water on into three scholarships very quickly. How Purdue's approaching that in recruiting, I can't tell you, but it does stand to reason to suggest that this wiggle room coming down the road can change people's approaches to how they're recruiting right now. The question of NIL is going to come up here. I would expect NIL to be part of this still. If it's not, someone will sue and someone will win, because that is the nature of the NCAA in the modern era. So there will still be unevenness in terms of, okay, this guy's getting this at this school, this guy's getting this at this school, this women's basketball player just transferred from this place because this place put an NIL deal on the table. So there will still be some disparity in terms of the best making more money than everyone else. It will still play into recruiting, I'm quite certain. But what changes is, like, look what happened to Wisconsin and Minnesota in men's basketball this year, right? Look what happened to Purdue football to a certain extent with Deion Burks and Nick Scourton, however you pronounce his name. I should know that. It's kind of my job. You won't have situations where guys aren't making something really significant. I think whatever salary comes about here, and I have no idea, again, how Purdue and everyone else in the country is going to allot their money. But players are going to be making a good amount of money, kind of no matter what. So the likelihood of a Chucky Hepburn feeling compelled to go take Louisville's money and leaving Wisconsin, the possibility of the people who left Minnesota to go get paid somewhere else, that stuff maybe is blunted a little bit, not completely, but a little bit. There's still going to be people out there throwing money around like it's, like it's monopoly money. But there may not be as much to prey on as there is right now, because all of these guys are going to be making what I have to assume to be good money. Now, everybody's definition of good money is probably different, and $1 million is still a lot more money than $150,000. So again, all of this stuff is going to play out, but supposedly there's going to be some actual NIL oversight involved in this, which, what a good idea, right? So this is what it took to get, the quote-unquote guardrails in place for what has been an absolute chaotic environment here for the last couple of years, to the benefit of the student athletes who, some of them probably shouldn't want this, because the open market is a completely unregulated, completely open market where they can make just gobs of money via these nebulous numbers just being thrown around. But there is going to be some allegedly NIL oversight, what all that's going to entail, whether it's going to still be quote-unquote illegal or at least not illegal. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. Whether or not it's going to be frowned upon to use NIL in recruiting, which has been a joke, obviously, these last couple of years. Whether that's still going to be something that's cracked down on, or whether that will be cracked down on for the first time ever, I have no idea, but that'll kind of remain to be seen. There is going to be some measure of oversight, though, and reportedly there's going to be some reporting mechanisms put in place that maybe aren't in place right now. There's going to be some fair market value component to this, which, if you read my columns, which I hope some of you do, and don't just watch these videos, listen to these podcasts, I am a better writer than I am a speaker. Some days, anyway. Fair market value always had to be part of this. It never was. What you saw was just these schools just throwing out these nebulous numbers for nebulous purposes. Hey, we'll give you $750,000 in NIL, but then you never sees the light of day what all that entailed, what that person did to earn that money. It just was a disaster from day one. It was great for the athletes because they're getting just boatloads of money thrown at them. But it created a very, very dysfunctional marketplace here. Now, if there's some sort of fair market value component to this, you can set a number and say, all right, we can pay you $100 an hour. We can pay you X to do this. We can pay you X to do that. If you're going to go talk to an elementary school, we'll give you $250 for the day, or $1,000, or whatever the number might be. But it'll be even. It'll be documented. It'll be theoretically policed. And again, theoretically, everything's theoretical with the NCAA, because this all might be a disaster. This all might kind of devolve into another unregulated pit of chaos. But I think the fair market value part of this always had to be the case, and it never was. So you saw these just, again, nebulous numbers. So-and-so made X number at Louisville, or so-and-so made X number at Miami, or whatever. And I think those days, don't completely go away, but I think at least there might be some order to it. If there's anything that can enforce any of this. This is going to be overseen, apparently, by the lawyers who brought the suit. So who knows how the hell that's going to work. I sure don't. What does this change for fans? It's way too early to tell. I don't see a day ever where colleges don't stop asking you for money. That it's going to depend on what ways athletic departments can shelter money from the pool that has to go to the athletes. If donations are not considered part of the revenue the athletic department brings in, that might up people's urgency to fundraise. I have no idea, but they're still going to ask you to buy tickets. They're still going to ask you to donate. They're still going to ask you to, I assume, fund scholarships, things like that. Whether or not it's going to be collectives doing the NIL stuff anymore kind of remains to be seen. I think they probably will, since that theoretical barrier between them and athletic department could be an important part of the laundering process. Um, it is. It all remains to be seen, but these are professional athletes now. Let's just put that out there from the get-go. If that somehow sours you on the college experience, that these aren't the doe-eyed, wholesome young people who just want to represent their school in the best way possible. If that somehow sours you on college sports, then this is kind of your day of reckoning. And I will tell you that I'm sure the Purdue Rugby Club would probably love to have you when they host Miami of Ohio at the intramural playing fields next week. I'm not making fun of the rugby club. I'm just saying that that's what you've been thinking this is the whole time. Really, I don't think this changes anything. If you think that players getting paid somehow changes what you're watching, I've got some bad news for you on a lot of these teams and a lot of these players. Maybe not as much as at Purdue as a lot of places, but Zach Edey was a millionaire this year, basically, in terms of revenue. So I don't know if that dulled your enjoyment of watching him play or not, but it was what it was. What this is going to mean long term for Olympic sports is really going to be something, because if you are mandated to pay all your athletes somehow, and depending on how the Title IX thing falls, every dollar you're paying a golfer is a dollar you can't pay football. We know how this is going to go. That's just the reality of it. We know how this is going to go. Football and basketball, much more football than basketball, drive all of this. That is why there's a $1 billion media deal the Big Ten is benefiting from, which would entail a third of the payout, basically, from the NCAA to the stakeholders in this case. But $1 billion the Big Ten gets or got from its media partners to put football on TV. Basketball was a secondary consideration to that, if a consideration at all. I don't know. People are going to keep investing in football and, to a lesser extent, basketball above everything else. So if it gets to a situation where money has to be divided among all these other sports, some of these sports are going to get dropped, or they're going to become club sports very quickly. That's just my opinion. That's just my sense. I know how this world works, and I know how much people want to spend on football. It is obviously the priority for every athletic department that has it. And it is a fascinating, probably disconcerting time to be an Olympic sport. And we'll kind of see how this all plays out in that regard as well. So that's just kind of what I wrote down from in the immediate aftermath of this much anticipated settlement between the NCAA and the power conferences specifically, and the bringers, the initiators, the providers of these many lawsuits that have been brought against the NCAA. So I hope that all made sense, and I hope it was interesting. If I were you, I wouldn't have listened to more than 10 minutes of that, because that had to be boring as hell. I would urge you, if you're interested in this, go read some of the reporting that has been done on this. Ross Dellinger from Yahoo has done a great job covering this. I would steer you to him more than anybody else. I think he has done a great job covering all of this and explaining it in a digestible manner. Hey, that's what I got. That is our GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast in this case. It has been brought to you by the Union Club Hotel at Purdue, and we appreciate them very much. So I'm eating there tonight, so next time you see me, I will be significantly fancier and substantially classier. So we will talk to you guys again next week, and thanks.